Good morning, everybody. Welcome back from spring break. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope your families are doing well. I can't wait to go back to school. I'm sure you feel the same way. We'll see when that happens. I guess it won't be before May 18th. So let's get on to what we should be discussing, and that is the causes of the First World War. The First World War basically has been seen as being caused by four major factors. And there is a nice handy way to memorize that. And it is the word main, M-A-I-N. Militarism, M for militarism. A for alliances. I for imperialism, and N for nationalism. These are all factors in the coming of the First World War. You'll remember that Bismarck's alliance system had isolated France. France had lost the Alsace-Lorraine in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. That made France a rival or an opponent to Germany that Bismarck could not bring into any alliance and rather had to isolate. He did that successfully. You remember Bismarck's alliance system and how it worked, how it tied all the great powers to Germany, where no great power, not Russia, not the Austria Hungarian Empire, not Great Britain, and not Italy, could wage war without German support. This was particularly critical in the Balkans. You have to look in maps and look for the Balkans. I may put some maps up, but try to look at the geography of the Balkans. In the Balkans, the critical issues really were between Austria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Russian Empire. The Russians backed the Serbians. Serbia believed that it should have a national state, and remember, nationalism was the ideology of the time. A national state, that means that a particular people who shared a common culture, a common language, and a common history should have an independent state in historical areas. Serbia claimed all of the Balkans as Greater Serbia. It would ultimately come to pass in the establishment of Yugoslavia after the First World War. But at the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, the 19th and 20th centuries, Serbia was struggling to achieve that. And Russia backed the Serbians. They shared a common religion, sense of Slavic history. Pan-Slavism was a ideology in Russia, that is, that Russia should support all Slavic peoples. And Serbia had Russian support. Against Russia, you had the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which saw itself as a multi-ethnic, non-nationalist empire, opposed to all nationalisms, because the Austro-Hungarian Empire was made up of many different nationalities, and therefore nationalism did not apply to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In fact, it was an argument against the existence of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Well, the Austrians basically had penetrated the Balkans on the western coast, the western side. Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, these were tied to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Serbia, as I said, was tied to the Russian Empire. There were several Balkan wars just before 1914, so that the temperature was rising. In addition to that, Kaiser Wilhelm II, when he came to power, within 2 years of taking the throne in 1888, by 1890, he fired Bismarck and basically dismantled the alliance system. This allowed France to establish diplomatic ties to Russia. Now you have the Balkan situation, nationalism, tied to a breakdown of the alliance systems that kept Europe from waging a general war. And you have the establishment of two competing alliances, military blocs. You have the Allies, that is Russia and France, later to bring in Great Britain, and you have the Central Powers. The Central Powers were Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That basically established the possibility for war. Many historians today feel that was the key issue. That Maine really should be something like AIM, because the alliance systems had kept Europe from waging war, general war. These alliance systems broke down as Kaiser Wilhelm fired Bismarck and established a bilateral alliance with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and against the Russians. This then created the possibilities for a rival system, that is two power blocks, two political military systems that had issues, conflicting issues, and that would naturally lead to war. Most historians have generally seen militarism as being more important. That is, that these armies were so large. The armies that were created at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century were so large, so mechanized, so tied to industry that they basically had to wage war. And once the conflict was set loose, was sparked by anything, they could not stop mobilization and moving troops to the front to wage that war. So war acted as a kind of mechanical response to issues that could spark that war, and that's exactly what happened. These armies, once one nation mobilized, all nations had to mobilize. They really depended on huge railway timetables. That is, they had to move troops, so they had to control the railway systems to get those troops to the front and wage effective war, or else they would lose. That has been treated by Australian historian out of Oxford University, Christopher Clark, in Sleepwalkers. That is a very good book, and if you can take a look at that book, I think it will give you a good sense of how the requirements of mechanized mass warfare, industrial warfare, required a kind of reflexive response to any mobilization. And as you know, what actually sparked the First World War was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. He would become the emperor. Well, he didn't become because he was assassinated, but he was in line to become the emperor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was assassinated by Serbian nationalists who felt that Bosnia-Herzegovina, which Austria had annexed in 1908, almost causing a war with Russia, was really Serbian territory and should be given to Greater Serbia. The Black Hand and the assassin, Gavrilo Princips, was a Serbian nationalist who shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, and that began a series of steps that led to ultimatums by Austria against Serbia, and these ultimatums were almost accepted, but Russia came in to back up the Serbians. The ultimatums basically called for Serbia to dismantle its military, to renounce Bosnia-Herzegovina, and to allow Austrian investigation of the complicity between the Serbian government and the assassins. That was almost accepted by Serbia, but in July A month after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, July 28th of 1914, Russia backed the Serbians and began a partial mobilization of their soldiers. Once they did that, everybody mobilized, particularly Germany. Germany mobilized, and then it basically brought into effect the Schlieffen Plan. The Schlieffen Plan was basically designed to fight a two-front war. That is, to knock France out of the war with a massive attack across Belgium, and then turn quickly before Russia could fully enter the war and defeat the Russians. So it was a kind of defeat the French with a massive right cross, I guess, of huge number of troops, and then turn around and defeat the Russians before they could mobilize. That plan basically failed to take into account Russian modernization of railways between 1911 and 1914. Russia had gotten better. So Russia was able to mobilize faster. They threatened Germany, and Germany had to weaken the Schlieffen attack on France, and then that fell apart as the French were able to stop the Germans near Paris. Once that happened, that led into the Western Front. That is trench warfare for the next 4 years. Okay, so I'm going to show you a couple of clips. Please watch them over time, and we'll discuss this issue as we go on. I'm going to try on Thursday to have a live session, so I will let you know how. It's going to be on Google Meets, so I will let you know, and I will post that on Edmodo so you can get on the live meet.